This video is sponsored by nobody, so go give our TikTok and Twitch a follow. In our last look on how Ultimate Alien era Ben would look in the grim darkness of Warhammer 40K, we came to the conclusion that Ben had the raw power and skill set to survive most of the hostile situations in the verse, with a bit of prep time. But one tactic we chose not to highlight due to time constraints would be Ben acquiring DNA samples from some of the most dangerous species in the Warhammer 40K galaxy. Ben has a plethora of options to choose from provided that he's set up in an environment where he can get the jump on the theoretical subject. And the first species that we want to do a hypothetical on are the Drukhari, or Dark Eldar. The Drukari are an offshoot of the Eldari race that survived the birth of the fourth Chaos God. This being is the apex of horny posting, the prince of sex, drugs, and rock and roll Slaanesh. Unlike the Exodites or the Craftworld Eldar, who withdrew from their post-scarcity society before they went off the deep end, the modern denizens of Kamara were knee-deep in the horrific levels of debauchery and drug-fueled ecstasy that led to the birth of a powerful warp construct able to distort reality. The en masse and most likely smelly writhing the Eldar did in the material dimension of the universe came to a shuddering climax as the Prince of Pleasure opened a literal multi-solar system-sized portal to hell, instantly eviscerating the very souls of any Eldar foolish enough to be around their worlds when Slaanesh was born. The Drukari escaped this fate by taking their filthy acts at likely unreasonable prices to the Eldar's portion of the webway, only having Slaanesh take a chunk out of their souls and leave them with the equivalent of a psychic leaking faucet. The Drukari quickly found out that they could not only stave off Slaanesh rightfully reaping their souls by feasting on the suffering of others, but that it rejuvenated and amped their physical capabilities. The Drukari then took a long look at what the horrific pursuit of pleasure and vice did to not only their own people but the galaxy as a whole, and of course they decided that they should be worse, as one would. Unlike their non-sociopathic brethren, the Dark Eldar are almost completely unable to use conventional psychic abilities and instead rely on technology and predator-like physicality to deal damage. All Eldar anatomically possess a body plan similar to humans, with some very notable differences. They generally range from 6 to 7 feet in height, and baseline Eldar tend to weigh between 100 and 170 pounds, with Drukari being a bit more physically imposing and muscle-bound due to the atrophy of their psyker abilities. They possess both denser muscle fibers and a complex series of additional fibers shaped like coils along their skeletal muscle, which makes them more explosive. Their bones are notably lighter while remaining just as strong, and their immune systems are among the best in the Warhammer 40K verse. They rarely, if ever, get sick from any conventional illness. They possess much higher cognitive function than a baseline 40K human, and subsequently have various adaptations like a near-perfect memory, sharper senses, and the ability to detect the memories of others in certain psionically active places. Their genetic structure is also nearly impervious to error, and mutations are rare among them, possibly due to them being handcrafted by the old ones, though being a hypothetical Omnitrix transformation would also protect them from this. They are also extremely resistant to telepathy, this being to the point that the only people with less chaos servants than them are the literal bug people in the case of the Tyranids, and those with no psychic potential at all such as human blanks. As known well by fandom, Ben's aliens represent a sort of projection of what Ben would be like as a member of their race based off of Ben's own genetic sample. In addition, this version within the Omnitrix and the Ultimatrix are modeled with the perfect environmental and epigenetic conditions for that alien's growth, making them the absolute pinnacle of what can be expected from a baseline member of the species without any outstanding mutations. A person analogous to this within the Drukari would most likely be Lilith Hesperax. The illogical extreme of the Dommy-Mommy trope, Lilith Hesperax is a whirlwind of knives and carnage. Her grace and brutality among the witch cult of the Drukari is a legend, and she's reigned as the undisputed champion of their vaunted arenas for hundreds, if not thousands of years. She's able to blitz people like captain-level space marines, who themselves are faster than eyesight, as well as high-level Astarte with massively hypersonic reaction speed. Her physical strength isn't something to scoff at either, as she's able to lock blades with the aforementioned Astarte and hold her ground against and physically overpower orcs, and has the stamina to fight for 6 hours with Caudalon, who's probably the best duelist in his era of space marines. And in that battle with Caudalon, she suffered only a single scar while being completely devoid of armor. Lilith is also all natural. She explicitly doesn't use any drugs or any particularly nasty gear, aside from her dual monomolecular knives. Ben's version of Drukari would likely match her physically, but not so in terms of sheer skill, making this form at base being a bit of a glass cannon speed fighter, at least compared to usual brawler choices like Forearms and Wrath. Considering Ben's propensity to make rather silly alien names when forced to come up with them on the fly, we're just going to say that this transformation would be called, Knife Ears. The ultimate form of Knife Ears is one that Ben would only use in situations where there's no other option except for bloodshed. The trade-offs for this form would be an atrophy of Eldar extrasensory abilities, and the complete atrophy of their ability to actively use conventional psyker powers. In return, they get a suite of additional physical adaptations, which make them more suited for close quarters brawling such as higher bone density, stronger versions of their internal bone plates, and much denser muscle fibers so that they can have a proportional increase to their already frankly ludicrous speed. And this definitely isn't out of the question for Ultimate transformations, especially considering the crazy adaptations given to aliens like Ultimate Humongousaur, and the fact that Ultimate aliens are formed through a simulation of millions of hypothetical years, being subject to the worst possible scenarios. And the first radical adaptation to Ultimate Knife Ears would be the frontal lobe, with the sensory adaptations of Eldar ears moving to a crown-like assortment of bone antlers, being located on the forehead and resembling demonic horns. These antlers would be used as a kind of focus point for their first new ultimate ability, which is the power to drain not just the suffering of others, but the everything. Eldar are able to naturally rejuvenate themselves with their psychic powers, and Ultimate Knife Ears has convergently evolved an offensive and better use of that by draining the very spirit from its victims while they brawl. Ultimate Knife Ears' primary combat strategy is going to be to stick and move, punishing enemies with an onslaught of supersonic attacks, and also keeping himself healed and 100% by whittling down the very soul of his victim, until there's nothing left but a husk. The secondary adaptation is a complete reconfiguration of Ben's psyche to keep the 3 big survival imperatives in place for Warhammer 40K. Resist any psychic influence, be able to think on the fly better for combat scenarios, and of course, sociopathy. The first of these is to outcompete fellow Eldar and Chaos Simps, doing so by removing any possibility of them manipulating this form, while making their mind a steel fortress against the warp. And the second of these is just a retooling of the high mental acuity of the Eldar mind to be primarily used for battle, as the Warhammer 40K verse is so rife with variables that being able to develop new strategies would be a valuable asset to the already creative Ben. And the final adaptation, Sociopathy, is not only completely in line with the trajectory of the Dark Eldar's horrific and objectively evil character as a species, but is also an explicit benefit because it allows Ben to disassociate with the brutal acts that he may be prone to commit in this form, almost turning him into a different person akin to Wrath. And when an enemy needs to be whittled down and broken both mentally and physically piece by piece, Ultimate Knife Ears is the tool for the job. So that was our second installment in what's becoming kind of a series in this Warhammer 40K and Ben 10 crossover. But since this one was definitely fun to make, we're definitely interested in covering other Ultimate versions of aliens throughout fiction. There's pretty much a limitless pool of characters that we can pull from, so if you're interested in seeing an Ultimate version of a different species or character, I'm going to leave a pinned comment down below where you can put your requests. And if you liked this video, definitely leave a like and a comment to help us in the algorithm. And like I said, we also have our other socials. We have TikTok and Twitch as well, so I would appreciate you supporting us on those platforms. We're currently trying to work towards a weekly or bi-weekly video release here on YouTube, but if you're interested in seeing daily content, that's definitely where you're going to need to go. But if you got this far into the video, thanks for watching. Love you guys, bye.